today to the School of Nursing's Professional Development for Faculty and Staff Lunch and Learn. Ed Beck is with CIS, and Ed is going to work with us today on introducing everybody how to use Moodle Grader and how to work around that navigation as it's a relatively new tool to us online and can be helpful across campus. So I'm happy to see so many non-nursing folks here today. So welcome. Thanks everybody for coming on to Zoom. And I will turn the floor over to Ed. I will be monitoring the chat. So if anybody has chat questions, Ed, I'll keep an eye on that just so you don't have to. And then we'll pause for questions at the end, and we'll have everybody out of here in about an hour.
Okay, great. So what I did when I was planning on doing this is I just came up with a bunch of kind of learning objectives to go through what I would want to know about the Moodle Grader, and simple ones like, have you even seen it yet? How can you highlight, circle, and comment directly on the paper? And then going into some more advanced features like how do you add a rubric in, or how do you add a grading guide in right into this so you're not having to maintain kind of separate versions of these. Things to speed up the marking workflow, like being able to filter with just being able to see the students that are yet to be graded. Things like that, just stuff that I would want to know about it. So I just have those up on the screen right now, and I invite you to read through those. And if anybody's got any other suggestions, like I know I've been communicating with Lori, and Lori wanted to know, like, specifically, like, how do I take off things for being late? How do I take off extra points for being late if that's not, directly in the rubric already, if I'm not giving points for being on time? So I've got that written on my paper at the bottom. So if there's other questions that you seem to have, feel free to put those in the chat box, or to let me know right now if there's other things you want me to kind of cover while we go over this. And hearing nothing, I'm moving on. So what I did in preparation for this is I just set up a Moodle class, and I've got a bunch of different assignments in there. So I'm going to start from the end. I'm going to start by showing you what it looks like when you go to do the grading through this, and then I'll go back and I'll show you how to set those up specifically. So we're going to start with just an assignment that's the generic assignment, and I haven't done really any modifications to it. And when I go into the assignment, I have these two buttons over here, view all submissions and grade. And that's one of the things I like about this change in Moodle, is that there are still, everything that we used to do is still here. So if I'm the type of person that still wants to just download all of them in a zip file and get the actual Microsoft Word documents, maybe because I'm using track changes on it, that is still available to me. But we don't have to do that. The other way to get into it is just to go right and click on grade, which brings us into that new grading interface. So I'm going to do that, and this is just a pretend class. So there's really only two students in here, Erica and myself, and I just have those same learning objectives in this grader. And one of the things I want to show you right away is over on the right-hand side, we have a drop-down menu which has all my users, Ed Beck, Erica Erickson, and Han Solo. I can go through users by using these left or right keys, and I can see the next person's. And right below that, there's a filter button. So I can choose to say, like, I only want to look at people who've actually submitted something. Or maybe I've graded most of them, and I just want to look at the ones that still require grading. And it will bring me down to only showing me those specific students. So that filter button is there for you. And I think that's one of the things that maybe if you were exploring this yourself, you might not notice. Now, right now I'm set up where the students' assignments on the left side and my grading tools are on the right-hand side. But over here, we can toggle between three views, one of which is just to only show the paper, one of which is to show the paper in 2/3 of the screen and have that grading interface on the right-hand side, and the other one is just to show the grading interface only. Now, I haven't done anything special to this, So this one, I have a box to put the grade out of 100 and my normal feedback comments. But over here, we can actually mark up this document. And one of my favorite ways to do it is just by using text boxes. And the text box control is right here, so that I can just grab here and I can write my comment right on their paper without having to download it or pay attention. Now you notice it collapses. And that's what this button is right here. It can make it open by default or collapse by default. So you can start to put comments around the paper. And I think that's really nice in the way it's displayed and that you can keep those. To move through the paper, you have this hand tool, and that's what allows us to just, click and scroll through. Or if I need to select something, maybe I need to select one of the objects I've just created, that's what this pointer tool is right here for. So I can go ahead and click this. I've never known anyone that's very good at with a mouse, but is there anybody here that grades either on like a Surface tablet or an iPad? Here, I'm trying to sign my name. I find this difficult. I wouldn't be trying to mark up my papers with my mouse, but if someone's good at it or has a tablet where they have a stylus to it, you could probably write up and mark up a paper as you go. You're seeing that I'm reselecting those things. I'm deleting them by clicking on them and by hitting the delete button. I got to warn you though, if you print, if I write my name and Beck and it's not touching, I'm just trying to think of things where it might be frustrating later. If you click on it, it's not touching. Each one of those is a separate object that if you need to erase it later, you would need to delete individually, just the way you're seeing me do that. So if you're going to mark it up in that way, be aware of those limitations. You can draw lines if you just wanted to like underline something. I find the circle, if I want to try to circle something, kind of a little bit hard to deal with because it's real easy to be cutting off the text, but you could try to circle something. If I was trying to do something like that, I think I would be more inclined to use the box. You can go ahead and say like, okay, I need you to look at this sentence and then here's the comment that goes along with that sentence. I can even change the color of my comment. So I can say, okay, I wanted to highlight or underline something in red, and then here's my comment in red. So I'm going to keep going through the different things. They have a highlighter, and again, just like with how there was next to the note, there was the color of the note that it's on, you can do the highlighter and change the color of the highlights. So you can go here and mark up a paper in that way by using that highlighter. And then I'm not a huge big fan of these, but there's also the stamp button where you can use, they have 4 predefined stamps. To travel between pages in the document is up in the top left. And you see me going from page 1 to 5 and back again. So that's those first 2 kind of learning objectives that we went through. And now I'm going to move on to this one right here, because you might find yourself that you use the same comments over and over again all the time. And so my comment might be needs citation. I'm sure you've never put that on one of your students' papers. And I need to use that so often, I might want to save that to my quick list. So I can save that needs citation comment. And then when I go to do a new one, I can click that quick list right there. And I can say, you know what, here's one of the comments I use all the time. Here's another one of the comments I use all the time. So you can save those right on your quick list. If you decide later on that you don't need those anymore, you can delete things from your quick list. Now, those are not specific to this particular assignment. So if you build your quick list of the kind of comments that you're using all the time, and you are using them on one paper, when you try the next paper, all your comments will go with you. So I find that that's kind of nice. I like that it's not tied to this particular assignment. I'm just going to take a second and pull up the chat box because I think I see some notifications.
Yeah, Ed, I think the first question starts with Cheryl asking if there's a way to have aggregated feedback, carrying it from one week to the next. Presently in the School of Nursing, we have a document that allows us to keep a running list of feedback in these discussion questions because their rubric is standard on all their discussion question threads. And so I think what Cheryl's asking, is there a way to be able to see it from one assignment to the next, or is it assignment specific?
Yeah, I understand the question. There's not a way to do that built into Moodle. The only way to do that would be to continue to upload feedback files the way you're already doing it, and you have that box right here. But no, there's not a way that you can see last assignment's feedback as you're grading the new assignment.
Okay, I have another question, Ed.
Yeah.
And I'm the one who posted that first question. Looking at the markup that you're doing in the framework in which you're doing it, can students save? You're going to save your changes, okay, fine, and notify the students. And then can students download this paper and save it to their hard drive in the way that it's marked up, or does it stay just within this in Moodle?
There's two ways to look at it. One way, if they download it as a PDF, because it will turn into a PDF for them, I'm going to go ahead and save those changes. And so I'm going to show you here. When we get the feedback, there's two spots here. One is View Annotated PDF, which shows me in a very similar grader what the comments were that were shown. And then you can download and have it to your hard drive. So here's the PDF of that. And when I open that up, it's in a little bit of a different format. They have here, and then it goes down to the bottom like it was a footnote. So that's how they had to do it to make it gracefully fall back. If you need to download, it's really made for looking at the feedback right online, right on theirs, but it does convert it to the PDF document. If you were hoping for like a continuous revision of assignment and wanted them to be able to comment inline, that's where really the best tool for that is going to be using like the Microsoft Word track changes. This is more for quick and final feedback, because what's going to spit out is going to be that PDF. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It seems that when they put out the PDF that they can't open those little bullets. They have to go down to the bottom, which personally I would find that cumbersome because it's not connecting directly. The advantage of those little bubbles is to open it up at the site, to see where it's reflected. So that's a little bit, I think. Right,
and if you do click on this, it does lead you to it. So they don't have to scroll down. You see, I click and it brings me to it. But I agree with you. I think you're right with that criticism.
Okay. Thank you.
I think it works best when they're viewing their feedback on right in their web browser. That's where it works best for me. Any other questions before I move on?
Yes, actually, this is going back a couple of steps with regard to using canned content from a feedback file, stuff that you use repetitively. Can you just copy and paste? Do you have to create a whole files for a comment file, or can you just copy and paste content that you already have in a feedback file into those boxes?
So yeah, so you can copy and paste into here. And so what it sounds like you're asking is, I keep it in a Microsoft Word document, and can I just, do Control V and have it here, and then save those comments and add it to my quick list so that I don't need to copy and paste anymore? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, it would take the work of copying and pasting that first time, but after you've done that, I think you'd be all set to go.
Oh, you mean that they will be automatically by default saved in your quick list?
Right, because this stays with you as a user in Moodle. So once you train this grader to know your frequently used comments, it's going to travel between assignments and also travel between courses.
Okay, thank you.
It's your quick list.
Thank you.
So Ed, thanks. That was one of Nancy's questions also, was she was asking if it was user specific or course specific. So that's good that that travels with us, because I believe that GradeMark does something similarly. It's user specific, not assignment specific. Elizabeth also had a question about if when you pull down the to be graded list, if you want to filter it to change out to submitted, that you have to go back out and come back into the grade book?
No, you don't have to go back out and come back in. So right now you see I have 3 students, and I go and I put one of those filters on. Now I've only got 1 student that's submitted, so it goes down to 1. If I uncheck that box, it goes back up to 3. So you don't have to leave and come back in to use that filter.
So it's only giving you submitted that still needs grading?
If I wanted submitted and still needs grading, I would have to click submitted and still needs grading.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So my next thing is I wanted to show you what it looks like if I'm using, this is a grading guide in it. And a grading guide in Moodle is, I think, what a lot of you call a rubric. If you want to be very technical, the definition of a rubric, you should have like 4 boxes, and each box is worth a specific number of points. And when you click on that box, it becomes that number of points. But what I hear a lot of times from faculty members is that's too rigid for them. They want that flexibility, that they want to be able to fit a certain amount of points, you know, anywhere from 0 to 10 based on one criteria. And using a grading guide in Moodle is one way you can do that. So this is actually a grading guide that was being used by someone, and they just had set up criteria that said like 9 to 10 would be great work. 8 would be good work, 7 would be so-so, and then you might get 6, you might get less than 6. And you can see that you're able to, with a grading guide, you can put anything in this number. And in fact, you can use up to 2 decimal places. So if I decided this was worth 9.68 points, I'm allowed to do that in Moodle. And then go through here to do the research grade. And again, I think that's worth 7 points. And that means that they're in this in progress box, but it doesn't mean I have to pick a very specific number. So I wanted to show you that if you do create a grading guide, you can then have a room where you can grade based on a criteria and say, you still need work on this aspect, you know, or give some kind of feedback that's very specific to what criteria we're in. This thesis is not up to par yet, and that's what I was looking for, and that's why you got those 8 points. So you can use those advanced grading tools that are also part of Moodle inside this workflow and still have the opportunity to see it right there. Now, I know that in the past, at least what the nursing department has done is had that continuous rubric that you have your week 1 feedback, your week 2 feedback, your week 3 feedback, which really would drive home for a student. If you're always missing the same 10 points, that's something you need to improve. And, you know, unfortunately, that aspect is not available in this, but what it could do is really speed up your flow and have you not have to focus on so many different types of documents and the organization in there. So I really wanted to show you that that grading guide, and I'm going to get out of this, and I want to show you next what it looks like with a rubric in it. And once you've seen the two and kind of understand the differences, then I can show you what it's like to set one of those up. So I'm going to go into an assignment with a rubric. And I really like...
Can I just share with the group while you're pulling that up, for anybody that's thinking about using these, Nancy, it sort of builds on what you said, because I trialed this in my own live class this week, and once you set, it's very similar to GradeMark in the sense that once you create your grading guide, which is our rubric for all intents and purposes, you can actually go into multiple sections and it'll ask if you want to create a new one or use one that already exists. And you can actually import, and I'm sure Ed, when he teaches us how to put them in, will show us that too, but that's a really neat.
Right, you're not reinventing the wheel every time you want to add this in. Once if you've got a rubric that's standard and you'd like to use it, you can reuse that rubric kind of very easily. So here is an ungraded assignment with a rubric, and it's really, you could really speed up yourself in how you grade because it's just as quick as clicking on the box the student earned. The other thing that I want to show you about this is the rubrics do not necessarily have to be logically consistent in its max grades versus the assignment's max grades. And what I mean by that is this rubric has 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28 points. But Moodle will do the math for me and scale it up to that max grade of 100. And I don't need to worry about that math. It does the addition and gives that to the students. So that's one of the things I really do like is if I was teaching a class and I said, you know what, I'm going to start out with a very simple rubric. I'm going to start out with a 3-line rubric. And every time we do another assignment, I'm going to add another layer of complexity each time so that their weekly assignments are building throughout the semester. I could do that and not have to worry on like, well, what does this add up to? Because Moodle will scale it for me. And that's one of the things I really like. What I really like to encourage people to set up simple rubrics for is for the people that are grading quick assignments on a check plus, check minus type scale, just a very quick feedback type thing. It doesn't take all that long to click a couple boxes and give them the definite feedback of here's where you lost your points. It takes the time to set up the grade or the rubric ahead of time, but I think that once you're into the grading mode, it can really speed you up and still give that feedback back to the students. Then for the big assignments, I tend to agree that it's nice to have that full range of flexibility for the big assignments, for the big papers and things like that. But I think a good constructed rubric can really help you out. Final thing I want to show before I show how to create a marking guide or a rubric. I don't know if anybody is using the group submission features of the assignment, but if I had something that was being graded in groups and I was using this grader, if you've got the group set up in Moodle already, you can apply grades and feedback and send it back to every single person in that group by just grading one person. So again, this because it's in Moodle and core to Moodle, it lets us do a bunch of different things based on other features in Moodle. Are there any questions before I go and I try to show you how to set up that grading guide for the first time? Hearing none, I'm moving on. Okay, so I'm going to go back into that assignment with simple direct grading, which is the default. And I'm going to go into the edit settings so I see what it looked like when I first set up this assignment. And over here under grade, the default setting that most people have never changed is right here under grading method. And if I go over here and change, you can see I have 3 choices here. I have a grading guide, I have a rubric, and I'm going to show you how to set up the rubric first. So I'm going to click Save and Display. And the very first time after you do that, it's going to push you right to this rubric form. And over here, the button on the right, I'll show you in a second, that's where I can work from a template. Say if the School of Nursing was really interested in this, we could publish your rubric that everybody's using for your discussion questions as a template. That way people can just grab it real quickly. That's also where you would go if you had one that you used in the past that you just wanted to reuse. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how to start it from scratch by clicking on this button on the left. down here, we have the rubric and we have the levels and the criterion. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to start adding some levels to this. Say I want up to 4 points in my rubric. And now 4 points, this is changeable. I can make this a different number. I can make this 10 over here. I can make this 8 over here. So you set up how many points each box is worth, and then you can start to put in the description of what does that mean. Now, when I add another level, it's going to copy whatever was above it, but I want to show you all these levels don't have to be equal. So if you said, you know what, this part of the assignment is worth 40 points, and this part of the assignment is only worth 10 points, you have that flexibility as you set up this rubric. So this one, I only have 3 levels on this line, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels on this line, and that's okay for this rubric. And so I can keep adding criterion, and yeah, you can copy and paste into these. So if you have a rubric that maybe that you downloaded from somewhere else, or that you developed in the past, either in Microsoft Word in a table or in Microsoft Excel, and you wanted to copy line by line, you could copy one box and put that box right in here, and copy another box and put that box right in here. It does take a little bit of time the first time, and unfortunately, there's not a quick way that we can, take a Microsoft Word document and just import and have Moodle know what you're talking about and make that into your rubric. You do have to go through that creation process the first time. So you can keep adding more levels. And then you have some options here at the bottom. For me, I like 0 points on the left-hand side and to move up to the top box, but you can change that. You can have it descend. You can have the rubrics being displayed to the students or not displayed to the students. So if you wanted to only have the students see the rubric after, you could set that up in Moodle. Although I think one of the big advantages of using a well-defined rubric is you're really letting the students know how they're going to be evaluated beforehand. But that's available to you, and these can help you kind of customize that rubric and make it your own. By default, if you have all those checked, the students are going to see it beforehand, they're going to see it after they submitted, and they're going to see it with all the feedback in it. They're going to see what their responses are. But you could take some of those away. Like you could not show them how many points they earn and just show them those descriptions. So I like to let them know, like, this is what's really important to me. This is what I'm weighting in this rubric. Are there any questions right here?
So Ed, just to be clear, so rubric, Marsha's asking in the chat how it looks in the grader, and then my question with that is, rubrics are an all or nothing, right? You're clicking this box and they get what your options are. Like on that first level, they get 0, 1, 6, 8, or 40. They don't get like in that 40 box, you can't make that 40 if there's 6.
There's no way, like on this one, I can't give someone 38 points in this rubric. It's all or nothing. It's you get this box or you get this box.
Okay, so you're better off with the guide if you needed something that was really more finite with numbers.
Yep, if you need something that's really finite, that's what you need. Do you need me to go back and show you the rubric again? I had shown you just a minute ago what it looks like in that box. Do you want me to go back again?
Before you do that, I have a quick question. You can't assign negative points to a rubric, right?
You can assign negative points to a rubric. So if I wanted to call this
like tardiness or whatever.
Spelling grammar.
Okay.
And you said, I don't give positive points for spelling and grammar. At the college level, that should just be expected. So you can have, -5.
Okay, good.
-10.
We didn't used to be able to do that, I didn't think. But
right, that was a new feature, often a requested feature that they rolled into Moodle 3.1. is to be able to put negative points in the rubric. Now, I'm about to show you grading guides, and that's a big difference between them. You can put negative points in a rubric. You cannot put negative points in a grading guide, and I'll show that to you when I get to that point. But anything else about the rubric?
I have a question. When we do upgrades, will all this stuff transfer with the upgrade, or will we have to re-enter all of this again?
No, it will keep moving forward through upgrades.
And that reminds me of, will our comments, our feedback comments that are saved in the grader, will those be saved also?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And then Nancy, I see you have a note in the chat box about negative points for participation. So Ed and I were trying to figure out what the workaround is if you're using the guide, the grading guide with attendance and participation points and late points, because we tend to have that issue in nursing sometimes a lot. And there is and Ed's going to talk about it at the end, there is a way to override in the grade book, even in the absence of using a rubric and using the guide, which is more in alignment with what our DQ rubric looks like. There is a workaround for that.
Now, to see the full rubric, that's where I like to put it into the mode where you just see the grading pane, but you can make it pop out if you were trying to see both at the same time. So you have your rubric here. So those buttons right here, pop it in and out so you can see that whole rubric spread out in front of you. But yeah, that's what it looks like in the actual visual assignment grader.
Is there a place to put actual comments about any of the components of the rubric, like down at the bottom?
So you see right here, we can do comments by criteria. So like, here's my specific comment about point of view. And then you also still have the general comments at the bottom, which can be kind of holistic about the entire assignment.
And how does it look for the student when they go in?
Mm-hmm. So it shows them the rubric, and then it shows them the feedback down here. Now, it's not showing anything because I didn't save those comments that I put in, but if there was comments specific to each row, they would just pop up right here.
So initially,
and then you get the general.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So initially, when we, if we introduce something like this, we need to let them know to continue to scroll down so that they know that the top one is the actual rubric and not their grade.
Mm-hmm. And then the feedback's at the bottom, which, you know, it's the same way when you give a document back to them. They see all the stuff on top that they saw when they submitted, and they have to scroll down to get that. So, I mean, I think we need to train our students on where to pick up the feedback, whether we're using these rubrics or not, because I think that a lot of students don't actually know how to pick up their feedback, which I think is an actual problem and a weakness right now.
Right. We teach them how to do that in UNIV for the students in the nursing program, but that was a identified weakness initially. Yeah.
Anything else before I move on?
My understanding is when you do just the traditional grading where you upload a feedback file that you have annotated through, let's say, Word, students are notified, they get an email, and there's a link that they can click on where they can immediately go to the site and log in.
It brings them to this page.
And see their feedback file. Can they also be brought to that page as well?
Yeah, this is the page that brings them to. And if there was a feedback file, it would it kind of looks like this. This is actually my submission.
Yeah.
But they see this same grid right here, and there's just like a feedback file line, and it's right there. So it's just a different line on the table.
What does it look like in the grade book when they click on grades?
So in the grade book, the way it looks is they see their grade.
Okay.
And then when they click on the link that's right to the left of it, they're brought directly to that same feedback screen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so, you know, I've done this and I've given feedback like this in Moodle. And one of the things I found myself doing, just as a quick tip, I often put, for detailed feedback, click on the link. Because if they're in the grade book, like I just showed you, they don't see that unless they click the link. So I think that's where you're driving at with that question. And it's a good thing to know. Okay, I'm going to move on then to setting up a grading guide. So I'm going to go back into my assignment, and I'm going to go into edit. Oh, I got to go back to my normal role. Okay. And I'm going to go into edit settings so that I see that screen like it was when I first set it up. And I'm going to expand the grade menu, and I'm going to change this from rubric to grading guide. Okay, I see a very similar thing. Now, I had already started here, so that's why it's saying edit the current form definition. But normally I would see I'll go ahead, I'm going to delete that form. Okay, so I see the normal buttons where I can go back to a template or I can start from scratch again. So I'm going to click on start from scratch. And over here, we have description for students. And that's where I would put the copy and paste the information from your rubric, 10 points for something and 8 to 9 points for something else. Put that language in there. And then the maximum score. Now, this one, you have the description for the students, the description for graders, and the maximum score. The least important thing here is the description for graders. That's if you want to give a note only to the faculty members who are doing the grading. And I think that's the kind of things that you do informally or through talking to each other when there's multiple people grading using the same rubric or the same course. So I really don't think that this is as important, and I just actually skip over it. So we have this, and then we can add more criteria here. And we can change those maximum scores. And this gives us that full range of points so that I can do 1, I can do 5 points, I could do 17.62 points if that's what I want to give, because I have a little more freedom when I'm working with a grading guide. So we can go ahead and do those. These frequently used comments are different than the comments that are available to mark up the points with. Those are if you would wanted to put it in there. I don't use those. I think those are kind of an older thing that's being left in Moodle as legacy. But you can make frequently used comments and save them and attach them to the grading guide. So I'm just going to go back just like I did for the rubric. Now you know how to set that up. Here's what it would look like in your assignment.
So Ed, with the frequently used comments in the guide, is that assignment specific then as opposed to, or is it guide specific as opposed to user specific?
Yeah, that attaches them to the guide, and it would let you put those frequently used comments down here in the feedback comments.
And do you still have to select them, like, or does it just show up automatically? Like this tends, like if you had something in there, like some feedback that seemed to be specific to like that particular component of the guide, or is it similar to content comments like in the user comments? Does that make sense? Like, is it something that populates automatically, or is it something that you still have to select?
I'm just going to make one.
You have to enter each comment individually, right? You couldn't copy and paste 3 comments and add it into the box. You would have to.
Right.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back in here. Go into grade. So you see where I say insert frequently used comment? Yeah, see, it's not even working properly right now. Okay, here it is.
Well, that brings you to another point. When it's not working properly, what alternative do we have?
When what's not working properly?
Your frequently used comments. Then we would have to write things in individually. Is that correct? Or do it the old school way, download, write the feedback and do it that way? If our frequency,
so like I said, this is a feature I was looking at more as like a legacy feature, and that I wasn't encouraging people to use it. It just the question was asked, so that's why I showed you.
No, I would love to.
So you want to have 15 comments that you're using all the time that you can just copy and paste, kind of formulaic. I thought that they, like, specifically like in your nursing program guides, it asks you not to do that, which is why I wasn't emphasizing it.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. I could be misunderstanding. Like, for instance, we tend to make the exact same remarks for APA feedback for students. Only capitalize the first word in the reference title, blah, blah, blah. And so we could just hit those each time if they're saved in there. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. You could write those in there and use those. Right now, what's happening is it's a design problem. It's a CSS problem. The text is there. It's just showing up as white on white. So you see when I highlight it, you can see it now. So I have to go and talk to the theme designer to make sure that she knows that text needs to be a different color than white. But see how you can't see it at all, but then when I highlighted it, it shows up?
Okay.
So I can fix that, and we'll work on that. Just this is such a frequently not used thing that we never noticed that. Any other questions about the grading? Okay, so the next thing, final thing I'm going to do on my list of things I wanted to get through is I want to show you how to set up a marking workflow and how that works with the grading guide. Because what I've heard from teachers in the past is that one of the problems with Moodle is that as you grade, your assignments kind of go out piecemeal, and you might take a week to grade things, and you feel like that might not be fair to show some people their grades a week ahead of time, and other people need to wait that, full week. Is that right?
I tend
no one has that problem?
I show
I
only
don't have to see
grades
that.
at one time.
Okay. Well, then I don't need to waste you guys' time if you're not interested in that.
Right. I mean, some of us do go in and, you might grade on a Tuesday, but most of us don't open our boxes until, and if there's a different way to do that, most of us,
okay. Then I will.
Most of us keep that link closed in the actual module until our grades are ready to be posted. Because sometimes you grade 2 on Tuesday, 3 on Wednesday, 12 on Thursday, however.
Right. Okay. So I will show you that. So you're managing it by hiding the module, which then kind of makes it so that notifications are never sent out, because if you've got a hidden assignment and you're grading it, that hidden assignment doesn't send out notifications that it was done. So that might, cause you other problems down the line. But what you can do is set up what they call a grading workflow in Moodle. And so I'm just going to turn that on to yes, a grading workflow, and show you what that does. Once you've got a grading workflow, now underneath each of these assignments, do you see I have not graded, in grading, grading completed, in review, ready for release, and released? The only ones that really matter, the only thing that really matters is this released. Because when you hit that, that's when it will release to the students, and all the students will get that notification that, yes, your teacher has given you feedback, and here's the link to do it, and they'll get that in their email. So what you can do by using this is you can say, okay, I want to select all my students, and with all of them that are selected, I want to set that grading workflow state.
But it will only notify the ones that are released, so you don't have to click release for every single student if you don't want to.
No, that's what I'm showing you how to do it for everybody at once. That way you don't have to feel like you do it one person at a time. You can do it one person at a time, but you don't have to.
Okay.
So you can release those students and say, like, yes, I want you to send a notification for all those students. So I'm going to click that and save those changes. Now, like I said, the only one in here that really matters is released.
So
this is made. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. So if you select released, then does this presume that all of the students will have the grades released once the final assignment has been graded by the instructor?
No, it's a manual process. Once I have finished grading all my students, then I release them.
Ah, and how do you do that?
Just like I just did, you would select your students.
I'll select all. Okay, I got it now. All right.
So I selected all my students, and then I went down here, and it says with selected, what do I want to do? And what I want to do is I want to set that feedback state. I want to set that marking workflow state. So I go in here, and I press go, and it shows me again which students are we working with, and it tells me, okay, we're talking about 3 users, and it lets me set their state, and then it lets me choose. Do you want to send the email, or do you not want to send the email? You can still choose to not send the email, but I like to send that email when I release the grades.
So Ed, when you do it this way, so even if you had, let's say you have a 20-person class and you've got 4 students that are graded and you just didn't go through and manually change the status, you can do a select all and then override it with the release.
So you can do it here.
Yep.
Okay. I can always do it right here. I can do it one by one. Or I can do it in that mass process and say, I want to do it for Ed and Erica, but not for Han Solo. He's not ready yet. Or I can do it for all and use that select all button.
That will override whatever the current status is. Like, let's say you had already done a couple of let's say somebody was late, so they're not graded because they didn't hand something in, and then you had someone that graded and someone that was in process, but you hadn't updated it. If you go down to the select all, it will override everything that's in there.
Yep.
Okay, great.
And we hide a lot of our Dropbox, or well, I should say pickup boxes, because we don't want to confuse the student. They're not supposed to put a file in there. We just put the grading rubric in there and finish grading, and then we unhide it or release it, so to speak. And, that's when the students are made aware. If that box is hidden and you click released, it's still hidden though, right? So let
me just reiterate. Assignments will not send an automatic email if it's hidden. Forums will not send an automatic email if it's hidden. Whether you're using this release thing, whether you are grading one by one, your students will not get an email if the assignment itself is hidden. So what I'm encouraging you to do is to use this as an alternative, because if you're doing all your grading while the assignment's hidden and then opening it up to the students, none of them ever receive that email.
Until you unhide it.
No, they don't get an email automatically when you unhide it. If they don't get, there's not like a backlog of them that when you unhide it, they just releases. This is the way to do it, to hold them and then release them all at once.
Well, it seems to me that if it's hidden, they won't be able to upload to the Dropbox.
Right,
No.
because this is a very specific question to the nursing program, because they use their rubrics for their forums, and there's no way to use there's no way to upload a feedback file to a forum. And so what they do is for each one of their discussion questions, they have a forum and an assignment, and they don't want that to confuse the students. So this is a very specific question for their program.
Now, if you do keep it hidden and it's still hidden and you click on released, if the student goes into the grade book, will they be able to see their grade? I know they don't get the email, but will they be able to see their grade? Or only?
Yes, they still. Yeah, if the way the program is currently doing it, where you're putting grades into a hidden assignment and then you're unhiding the assignment, yes, they still get to see their grades once it's unhidden, but it's not showing them their grades and sending an email.
But if it's not unhidden, in other words, it's still hidden, we haven't unhid it, and we release one student's grade, will that student be able to see their grade even though the Dropbox is still hidden?
If it's hidden, it's hidden. If the assignment is hidden, the grade is hidden. Okay,
thanks. Sorry for beating a dead horse.
No, that's okay.
I do have another question about that, and there's a couple of questions in the forum also. Let's assume that we don't hide it in the module, right? So it's just a live Dropbox, and I grade 2 students. If I mark them as graded, and they can go into that Dropbox, they will not see the grade until it's released. Is that my understanding?
Yes. Basically, there's 5 categories in there.
Yeah.
The first 4 are just for you, if you want to use it to organize yourself. The only one that matters to the student is it released or is it not released? Okay, released is really the important thing there.
So even if they're poking around in there, they won't see it until we physically hit that release button.
Right.
Okay. And then Marcia asked, can you paste an image into a note like when you're giving feedback, can you paste an image? Because I'm assuming in the sciences, there may be images that get posted. And then she also wanted to know, in a grading guide, can you still add notes and highlight within the grading guide, which I believe is yes. But
yes, you can annotate the paper any way you want, because you can still annotate everything on that left-hand side while that's on your right-hand side. And I know I'm waving my arms and it's backwards, so on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, right?
Good, I got it.
I think it's funny. Nobody else has to. It's okay.
Yeah, so that works. So it works very similarly to track changes in that you can make line-by-line comments, you can make individual deletions, and you can insert text and pictures.
You cannot insert pictures. That's what I was getting to. It's just plain HTML in the feedback. You can just type text.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ed, what else do you have, and what other questions do people have? Because we're just about at time, and I don't want to hold people up because I know that they have places to go and things to do.
I don't have anything.
What's the workaround for negative points?
Yeah, so when you're working with, oh, I gotta share my screen again. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. So the reason we need a workaround, just to review and recap for everybody while I get to the correct page, in the grading guide, you can't use negative points. And so whatever you put in here has to be in the positive. And I know that for some programs that doesn't work, especially when you're talking about things that are late and things like that. So what the workaround is to do a grade override from the grade book.
Oh, right.
And
basically manually change their grade.
Right, manually change their grade. So you have Ed here, and he earned a 100, of course, but he's also lazy and turned it in 2 days late, and you take 10 points off per day, and I can put it in as an 80. And what that will do for that student, and we can go ahead. One, when you put in a grade override, it's gonna mark it as such, and then when I go back into the sandbox as the student, it will still show me the full grade. I'm sorry, I'm having a...
You need to switch your role to see it as the student.
Yeah, and I had undone the grading. I had not saved the grading. So just the short answer to your question is they'll still see the grading guide, but then they'll get the lower grade, and you can even leave a note in that comment area in the grade book that said, like, I took off 20 points for being late.
So for school and nursing folks, I used this week in my DQs before, and Ed and I worked a lot around what the workaround was. And so since we do content, and anything that's a penalty for late participation, consecutive posting are all policy deductions, you just put a comment in the feedback piece at the bottom and then go in and click the override. And the override does give you a text box option as well. So you can also make a note there so that if your student doesn't read the note, like I sent one to a student and said, please note that your grade in the grade book is reflective of your 2-day late penalty of minus 20 points. And then I overwrote it in the grade book. So there are a couple of places that we can give them notification that just because the rubric says 85, if they were 2 days late, it's really a 65. And that's what shows up in the grade book and factors into their overall course GPA. Nancy, you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Ed, for giving this presentation. It was really helpful. My question is, and I think I already know the answer, but I want to throw it out there anyway.
Okay.
Has Moodle yet figured out a way for us to easily grade and mark up discussions?
We're working on it. No, Moodle does not have a way to do it. I have something that I'm working on as kind of like a side project, where you can see the forums in a very similar view, see it on the left side and be able to grade on the right hand side. We're still trying it. It's using 2 plugins to do it, and it would require using a different forum than the forum we're using, and then installing a separate grader on top of that, that would work very similar to that assignment grader. And we're playing with that right now. Right now, it does not seem slick. It does not seem very user friendly, and it might not be the kind of thing. Because I know we're working at it because we know it would change your life if you could do that in an easy way. And so we're very, very aware of that. But there's nothing from headquarters right now in core Moodle that allows us to do that. We're kind of expanding to try to do those things.
Well, I thank you very much for working on that, because it would really save a lot of time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thanks, Ed, for coming and sharing such valuable information. This has been recorded and will be available on a YouTube link once we get the YouTube blessing. So I will make sure that everybody that was here today gets a copy of that link. So if for some reason your phone number was up and not your name, please just email myself at CIAFARLE Adele or to Ed, and we will make sure that you get a link to today's presentation. So thank you, everybody, so much.
Can I give a couple quick things before I sign off?
Yes, Ed.
Okay, we're trying to do more of these. We want to be a little bit more active in having trainings throughout the year, and then of course kind of redoing those at Moodlepalooza for those that aren't available during the year. If you have ideas, if you have parts of Moodle that you'd like to know more about, or things that you want to know more about, please just send me an email or send it to Kelly, and we can continue to develop some more of these, kind of just the practical things that you're doing all the time. So let me know about that. And then also just a quick reminder that, you know, the best way if you've got a problem is always to submit a ticket, because if you submit it through the ticket system, then if I'm doing something like this for an hour or 2 hours, you know, John and Erica can cover for me. And if Erica or John are out of the building, I can cover for them. So using the ticket system for those types of things really helps us be as quick back to you as we can be. So we just really appreciate you going through the help desk for that kind of stuff. Other than that, I got nothing.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for putting so much work into this. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to having you guys back and doing some work with you again soon.
All right. Sounds great. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.